The wind howled like a wounded animal at the foot of the mountain, slicing through the thin air and carrying with it the smell of snow and pine. The path below was narrow and uneven, littered with loose stones that had fallen during the night. Most villagers avoided this place, especially at dawn, when the mountain still held the cold of the stars. But Ira had no choice. Every morning, before the sun climbed high enough to warm the rocks, she walked this path with a basket of wild herbs tied to her back. Ira was poor, poorer than most in her village. Her small wooden house clung to the edge of the valley like a tired bird's nest, its roof patched with mismatched pieces of tin. Since her parents had died years ago, she survived on what the land gave her: medicinal plants, berries, and roots she sold in the town market. Some days she earned enough to buy rice and lentils. Other days, she returned home with empty hands and a heavy heart. That morning, her thoughts were focused on finding mountain sage, a plant that grew only near the rocky base where the mountain began to rise sharply. The sage sold well, especially in winter. As she stepped carefully over a cluster of stones, something dark caught her eye near a fallen tree. At first, she thought it was a pile of clothes. Then she saw a hand. Ira froze. The man lay sprawled against the rocks, his body twisted unnaturally, blood staining the dirt beneath him. His clothes were expensive, she could tell even from a distance, but torn and soaked. His face was pale, lips tinged with blue, breath shallow and uneven. For a moment, fear wrapped around her chest. People did not simply appear half dead at the foot of the mountain. Bandits, fugitives, cursed souls, stories flooded her mind. She took a step back, her instinct screaming at her to run. Then the man groaned softly. It was a weak sound, barely louder than the wind, but it cut through her fear like a blade. Iris swallowed hard. Whoever he was dying. She knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she checked his pulse the way her mother had once taught her. It was faint but steady. His leg was badly injured, bent at an angle that made her stomach turn, and there was a deep gash on his head. "You fell," she whispered, as if he could hear her. "You fell from higher up." There was no one else around. No sound of approaching footsteps. No sign of help. If she left him, he would be dead by nightfall. Ira looked toward the path leading back to her village. Helping him would cost her time, energy, and possibly her life. Carrying a grown man down the mountain alone was nearly impossible. And yet, something in her heart refused to let her stand up and walk away. She tore a strip from her scarf and pressed it gently against his head to stop the bleeding. Using her small knife, she cut sturdy branches and fashioned a rough splint for his leg, tying it carefully with strips of cloth. It took her nearly an hour, working slowly and painfully, but she did not stop. By the time she finished, her hands were numb, her breath fogging in the cold air. "Please," she murmured, more to herself than to him. "Stay alive." Getting him to her house was the hardest thing she had ever done. She dragged him on a makeshift sled of branches and cloth, inch by inch down the rocky path. More than once she slipped and fell, scraping her knees and tearing her palms. Tears streamed down her face, but she kept going. When she finally reached her house, the sun was already high in the sky. Ira laid the man on her only bed and worked quickly. She cleaned his wounds with boiled water, applied crushed herbs, and wrapped his injuries as best she could. Then she sat beside him, exhausted, watching his chest rise and fall. For 2 days, he did not wake. Ira fed him water drop by drop, changed his bandages, and prayed in the quiet moments when the mountain seemed to hold its breath. She did not go to the market. She did not collect herbs. Her small supply of food dwindled, but she shared it with him anyway. On the 3rd morning, his eyes opened. At first, they were unfocused, clouded with pain and confusion. Then they found her face. "Where am I?" he whispered, his voice rough. "You're safe," Iris said softly. Relief flooded her so strongly that her knees nearly gave out. "You fell near the mountain. I brought you here." He tried to move and winced sharply. "My leg. It's broken," she said honestly. "But I set it as best I could. You need rest." He studied her then, really looked at her, the worn dress, the calloused hands, the exhaustion etched into her face. "You did this alone?" he asked. She nodded. There was no one else. For a long moment, he said nothing. His eyes closed again, and Ira worried she had tired him. Then he spoke, so quietly she almost missed it. "Thank you." In the days that followed, the man slowly regained strength. His name, he said, was Adrian. He told her he had been hiking alone when a sudden rockslide sent him tumbling down the slope. He remembered pain, darkness, and then waking in her small house. Ira never asked more than that. It was not her way to pry. To her, he was simply a man who needed help. She cooked for him what little she had, thin soups, boiled roots, and bread when she could afford flour. She changed his bandages daily and talked to him as she worked, telling him about the mountain, the village, and her parents. Adrian listened, sometimes asking questions, sometimes just watching her with a thoughtful expression. One evening, as the fire crackled softly, he asked, "Why did you help me?" Ira shrugged. "Because you were there. And you were hurt." "That's not an answer," he said gently. She hesitated, then smiled faintly. "My mother used to say that kindness is the only thing we truly own. Everything else can be taken." Adrian looked away, his jaw tightening, as if her words had struck something deep inside him. Weeks passed. Adrian learned to stand with the help of a crude walking stick Ira carved for him. When he was strong enough, he insisted on helping around the house, cleaning, repairing the roof, even attempting to gather herbs with her, though she scolded him when he overdid it. "You'll hurt yourself again," she warned. He smiled. "I owe you more than I can repay." She laughed softly. "Just don't fall off the mountain again." As winter approached, snow dusted the peaks, and the air grew colder. Ira worried about Adrian. His clothes were unsuitable for the coming cold, and her house barely kept out the wind. She also worried about herself. With her time spent caring for him, her savings were gone. One morning, Adrian asked her to walk with him to the edge of the path where she had first found him. "I need to leave soon," he said quietly. Her heart sank, though she had known this day would come. "Your leg. It's strong enough," he said. "And I can't stay forever. I have responsibilities." She nodded, hiding her disappointment. "I understand." They stood in silence, the mountain looming above them. "Ira," Adrian said suddenly. "If I told you who I really am, would it change anything?" She frowned slightly. "I don't think so." He studied her face, searching for something. "I am not just a traveler," he said carefully. "I own companies. Many of them. I have more money than I know what to do with." She stared at him, stunned. "You're joking." "I'm not," he said. "I'm a billionaire." The word felt unreal, heavy and distant. Ira looked at his worn boots, his tired eyes, the man who had slept on her floor and eaten her meager food. "Oh," she said at last. "That's all?" he asked, surprised. She shrugged again, the same simple gesture. "It doesn't change what happened. You were hurt. I helped." Adrian laughed softly, a sound filled with wonder. "You have no idea how rare that is." A car arrived 2 days later, sleek and black, its presence startling against the rugged landscape. Men in suits stepped out, their faces etched with relief when they saw Adrian. "Sir," one of them said, his voice thick with emotion. "We've been searching everywhere." Ira watched from the doorway, feeling suddenly small and out of place. Adrian turned to her before leaving. "Come with me," he said. "I can give you a life you've never imagined." Her heart pounded. The offer hung in the cold air like a dream. She shook her head slowly. "This is my home." He looked disappointed, but he nodded. "Then let me help you here." She smiled gently. "Help someone else the way I helped you." He took her hands in his, pressing something into her palm. When she opened it later, she found a simple card with his number, and a promise written on the back: "You saved my life. I will never forget you." True to his word, change came to the village, not overnight, but steadily. A clinic was built near the mountain, staffed with doctors and supplies. Roads were repaired. Jobs appeared where there had been none. Ira continued her simple life, gathering herbs, but now she sold them to the clinic, earning enough to live without fear. Months later, Adrian returned, not as a billionaire in a suit, but as a friend. He sat with her by the fire, listening to the mountain winds. "You changed my life," he told her. She smiled, staring into the flames. "No," she said softly. "You just remembered what it means to be human." And at the foot of the mountain, where fate had once brought a dying man and a poor girl together, two lives stood forever changed, not by wealth, but by kindness.